Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Munir Lazouzi from easymedicaldevice.com. And today we will talk about quality tools, or more importantly, how to validate your quality tools. Mainly we have, if you have passed some audits, you always have this question, do you have some quality tools? Have you validated them? And usually there is this question mark that people are having in their head, say, what is he talking about? So mainly this is that we are trying to talk about today. And we have with us Christophe Girardey from Wega. Christophe, welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast.
Hi Munir. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So we had Christophe previously where we talked about the quality departments and software departments, how they should collaborate together for the development of software. Now, let's move again in the software field about validation of quality software. But before, can you introduce quickly yourself about what you are doing exactly?
Yeah, of course I can do that. So my name is Christophe. I've been working now since 10 years with Wega, and I'm specialized exactly in this area of quality, of life science in general, and which encompasses pharma and medical device industry. And especially I'm doing a lot of exactly those validation of software for customers. And as you correctly mentioned, I saw quite a lot of question marks with our customers when we talk about quality tools. What does that mean to validate? Do I need to do that? Why do I need to do that? All these type of questions.
Exactly. Yeah. So maybe to start this discussion, just to also make it clear for people that are listening, when we are talking about quality tools, what is really inside this box of quality tools? What are we talking about mainly?
Yeah, so actually it's a very good question, and it's a broad term actually, quality tools. So essentially anything that has an impact on the quality of your medical device. So any systems that you would use to develop or to maintain the documentation or to perform also your clinical investigation, all these type of aspects have an impact on the quality of your medical device. And this is a broad term that comes into this quality tools.
So
more precise, yeah.
It means that anything that is generating or used to generate some quality data or to prove some quality information, etc. So as soon as it is used for the purpose of providing quality evidence to maybe auditors or authorities, etc., this is what mainly we are putting inside this box.
Yes, exactly. And when you look in the regulations, for example, in the 21 CFR 800, they talk about precisely it's about computers or automated data processing system that are used as part of the production or the quality system. So it's really a broad term, production or quality system. So it encompasses as well the system you use to manage your procedures, like a quality management system. So when you use an EQMS, as many companies do, meanwhile, this also falls into such a category, but also to produce, which means, okay, if you have certain machine, you also need to ensure that all of that is under control. And when you talk about software, so software as a medical device companies, they also have questions, okay, what does that mean to produce? But typically, if you use systems, for example, as well, to manage your requirements, to manage your releases, manage your changes, all these type of things also fall into this aspect of quality tools. So it's quite broad. So it could be as well ERP, so enterprise resource planning systems that some company have to manage the production are also aspects like that. So it is actually a big term, and this is exactly why you also need to have procedures. So we will for sure come to that later on, but to determine on your perspective what systems that you use fall into this category, which one are not validated relevant, which one are, and for which reason. So you need to have also rationale for that.
Yeah, so I find it as because I'm also making some audits, some internal audits with some companies. I find it like it's a low-hanging fruit, non-conformity for me, because I know that the question I'm asking mainly to people is, do you have some quality tools or quality software? And they are scratching their head and say, I don't know, I'm using Excel for that, or I'm using SharePoint, or I'm using this and that. And we start to dig and find more and more tools that they are using for quality, and this is when we are starting to see the problems. And as I said, it's a really low-hanging fruit for a lot of auditors to find that.
I also heard from many customers that from notified bodies, I also got non-conformities when they did the ISO certification, because this is also explicitly stated in the 13485. So you have a specific chapter that talks about that you need to have procedures around that for the validation of software used in the quality management system. It is formulated like that in the ISO. And many customers on my side, they don't think so much about this part. They think a lot about the medical device itself, but not what is really around and can impact finally the quality, right? And
yeah, because we are thinking, we are putting in place a lot of things for the product, for the software as medical device, software in a medical device, etc. So we are making validation documents, etc., testing, etc., cyber security tests, etc. But we are not putting a priority to the other tools also. So this is mainly why we have that. But why? I mean, we answered maybe a bit of this question, but why do we need to validate those quality tools mainly? Because mainly it's not the thing that we are using to sell. I mean, we are not selling it. We are selling another software, another hardware device, or another thing. So why is there specifically a validation similar to a software as a medical device? Why should we validate that, and what kind of things is expected when we are talking about quality tools then?
So the why is first because it's also really stated like that in the law and in the standards. Yeah, but the second aspect is also because really there is a potential impact. So thinking about the system you use, like an ERP, for example, it can really have an impact on the way you produce your system, your medical device itself. So if something goes wrong, then you could potentially have also issues with the medical device itself. Or if you have, let's come back to the EQMS, for example, validating means also ensuring that you have certain procedure in place, that you know who has access to do what, who can, for example, change procedures in the system. If all of a sudden anyone could see draft version, for example, of procedures, they could potentially follow the wrong processes. So you need to have a certain control over such a system. And this is exactly what software validation is about, that you ensure that this system that can potentially impact the quality of your device have to be under control. And this is what is behind this broad term validation, right?
And what is required also by the law or legislation or the standards is the fact that normally, if we are in the perfect world, you will first validate and then you will use. So, which is not really what is happening, I suppose.
Well, it depends. Some companies do. That's not the biggest majority. No, actually, this is a good distinction between what you call prospective validation and retrospective. So normally, you in an ideal world, as you say, you should first think about, okay, why do I need this tool? And you think about that by defining your requirements. Then you introduce the tool. Then you do all the verification. So we will come to the process for sure in a minute. But all of that should happen before you do it. Because if you do it retrospectively, there is a certain risk that the software is not properly behaving as you expect, or your data maybe are not secure enough. So it's also about this type of thing. So ensuring your record, your quality records are secure, have a certain retention time that you need to prove that you are compliant as well. And if you don't do it prospectively, so you might have a risk that you have a certain gap. And I see it frequently with some of the startups I help. It's very rare that they think about that before we have conversation together, right? And then you have exactly the situation where you can do retrospectively, exactly check, okay, what is the gap? What did I do wrong? Do I need to make some kappa maybe to fix some of the issues I had? But then if you need any changes in the future, then it's no longer accepted that you do it retrospectively. I think it's argumentable to say it, okay, I was not aware, I did an exercise first to do retrospectively, but then if you deploy other tools or other version of the tools, then I think as an inspector, I would not accept that you do it again retrospectively, because this is then not a control process. This means, okay, well, I just do it because you told me to do it and not because I have a procedure to do so, right?
Exactly. And we have a lot of software that are used now to collect data and to use data, like you talked about also clinical data, for example. I imagine that, for example, if you are starting a clinical investigation using those type of software, which are collecting important data, if there is no validation, I suppose that those data can be compromised, can maybe not be real or can be changed in the middle of things without maybe you noticing. It's not like on purpose, maybe your software is not calibrated or not parametered in-house for doing that. So this is what we are trying to identify during the validation, is potential way to compromise the data or to delete just by clicking a button where we say, oh, I deleted the data, now I cannot find them anymore, and what should I do now? I lost 2 months of work, etc. So this is the thing that we are trying to do with the validation, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's all about also this integrity of the data, especially in the clinical field. This is very important, that you can't really change some of the results because you are not really happy about the outcome you got, So these are also type of things that you might have. So it's important to have a certain control, who have access, who can change which type of data, in which cases. So here you need to have certain process in place. So if you have to correct some data, then typically you have a certain procedure to follow, and you can't just change it like that on the fly. So you need to have also some traceability. The term audit trail is something that is used quite a lot in the 21 CFR Part 11, which is exactly also what the FDA expects from us when they talk about software validation. So here in clinical data, if you change data, normally you should have an audit trail that says, oh, it was you, Munir, changing this data on that day, for which reasons, and so on and so forth. And all of that, normally you should define before you set up this tool in place, right? And this is why you need to have a procedure on how to validate such tools. For which tools? Because it's not for everything. So if you use just, let's take maybe a bad example, but just Word as itself, as an office tool, per se, it is not relevant to be validated because you don't do any things that has a direct impact. But for each system, that's would be my recommendation, have a clear assessment why such a tool would fall under a validation or not. So I have a certain, I usually call it high-level risk assessment or system risk assessment that you would do for all your softwares. And from there on decide, okay, this one is relevant because blah, blah, blah. And then I would go for validation. This one is not because blah, blah, blah. And then I can't go.
I think this is really a powerful advice here, because the auditor will ask you why you haven't validated this one or why you have validated this one. And having this document, this assessment with all the checklist or questions or answer or justification can help you to show also to an auditor that you have had the reflection about this. You had maybe a real brainstorming about this, the risk and potential things. And the auditor sometimes has nothing else to say because he's not an expert of the tool. He's not really knowing everything of the tool unless he has really a lot of knowledge about that. But the point is that there is a process in place. You have made your decision. You took a risk maybe by not validating that, but you had a justification why. And then it's fine, should be fine, unless, as I said, there are always some common sense. So if the common sense says that what you have done is really not good, maybe they see the problem. But usually this is what the auditors are looking for, really list of software that are quality relevant, all the reason assessment for yes or no validation, etc., etc. So this is really a good practice to do there.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And there are sometimes some gray zone, like some systems like CRM, customer relationship management, are frequently used for marketing purposes within a medical device company. There are some aspects that might come back to what would be quality tools, because if you also collect, for example, some feedback about the system or about the device you sell or some customer general feedback, then it could start to become a gray area. So just the marketing itself might not be. And this is sometimes a little bit exactly what such a checklist can help you to come up with. So if you have specific questions, that would help you to exactly rationalize why you did that or why not. And this is exactly what an inspector would probably ask you to.
Exactly. So now I am a medical device manufacturer. I am using some EQMS or some MRP or ERP or some clinical data software, etc. I bought that over the counter, I can say. So it's not like a customized tool. It's something that I bought directly. What should I do from there? So should I ask the vendor of this software to provide me the validation? Or is it me who should do the validation? Or what kind of validation is this? I mean, this is mainly the point where people are asking, okay, what should I do now? What is exactly the solution here?
Yeah, and so my general answer would be it depends, and there are several cases. Normally, first step should be to have exactly first some requirements, and this is sometimes you have some software that you use for specific cases that maybe even the vendor didn't have in mind. So you should still have, from my perspective, always a piece of this validation. So you can't buy a fully validated solution from your customer, because I have many customers that use, for example, Jira, maybe you heard about that, for many different purposes. So to track tickets, bugs from their system, but also sometimes to do post-market surveillance in general, and many different activities which are process that you can implement in such a system, but this is your own process. This is your intended use of that system. And maybe the producer of the software had a totally different standards that he was following in here. And this is, for me, the first step is collecting exactly your requirements. What is your intended use of the software? So what do you plan to do with it? And based on that, then you can, that is the ideal word, find the mapping software. So we help also sometimes to select the corresponding software on the market, an ERP or an EQMS, and there might be several. And here you can have a deeper dive in, okay, what is the quality management system of your supplier? Is he used to work in the medical device industry? Does he know what I'm talking about when we talk about all these regulations? Does he follow that, or does he also sell it in, I don't know, fully other unregulated parts? And maybe he has a totally different understanding and no quality systems. And this is, I would say, one of the first steps is exactly qualify your supplier. So what is he really doing? Qualifying can mean sending kind of questionnaire or studying what is available on some big software providers you would not audit as a maybe small company. So they would not let you in, like we talked about Atlassian. If you are a small startup, no way that you will be able to audit them. But there are a few things you can find on the internet, white papers, to make yourself aware. Okay, is it really just one small company building a software in their garage and having no clue about my branch where we are working with? And this is exactly this qualification. And this should be also one of the first steps that can derive then. For each system, it will be different. So normally you would describe exactly these activities in a validation plan where you say, okay, my supplier, I qualified it. I got already all this documentation. So what is the delta? Or if you don't have that, you can still buy it from the garage company, but then maybe you need to do more activities to compensate the risk, right, associated to this lacking of quality systems.
I mean, you can, as you said, also you can also do some kind of also basic validation. Like first, can I use my username and another password, and normally I should not enter in the system, or now I use my username and my password and I enter in the system. When I look at a document, do I have the right to look at to find this document or not? I mean, these are kind of basic information, but this can be a first step, if I can say, to really show, maybe additionally to what the vendor will be sending you, adding some basic check that you have done with the system on, as you said, on how you will use it, can be a good method. Is there some kind of standard or some kind of methodology that people should maybe look at when they are looking at validation? Hey, just a second. Do you need a EU, Swiss or UK representative? Then choose Easy Medical Device. We can represent you and also become your importer. Contact us at eo@easymedicaldevice.com.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a very old that you might have heard from the FDA, which is from, I think, 2002 or something like that, which is called General Principle of Software Validation, which is a good source of information, what software validation can be about. A very broad standard that is used quite a lot in pharma and also in medical device industry is called GAMP5. You might have heard about that.
Yeah.
Good automated manufacturing practices. This is I would say 500 or 600 pages book that talks a lot about exactly how you can do that. So it can be a bit overwhelming for people, but this is really a famous standard used quite a lot in this branch. And I think this is giving quite a lot of these advices that we are just talking about right now in a brief way. But essentially what you said, the testing these basic functionalities is usually something that I would recommend to not spend too much of the time. So normally if you qualify a supplier and found it a good one, what I usually recommend to do, and this is also what GAMP recommends to do, is per functionality that you describe in your intended use, you can have a mapping. Is that a standard functionality? Is it something that I configured specifically for my purposes? Or is it even something that I was custom made from my side for my exact purpose? Then usually you have a certain risk associated to that. The standard functionality, if your supplier is good, I would not expect that you would retest all these functionalities yourself. On the other end, if it was specifically developed for you, you can't pretend, okay, the supplier qualified it, many other customers use it. This type of arguments you can't really bring, right? And exactly, usually you perform a risk assessment describing exactly in a rational way exactly those activities. So this is a standard functionality. The impact if something goes wrong would be, I don't know, I lose all my clinical data. Maybe it's still a high risk for me. I would still maybe test some of the activities. In some cases, you also have procedural mitigation that you want to put in place. Like we talked, for example, about, okay, who can correct clinical data? If this is a requirement for your system that you need to be able to correct the clinical data, maybe here during this risk discussion, you would say, okay, but I don't want just one person to be able to do that. I want a specific second person to review and ensure the rationale is correct. This could be exactly your instrument to perform per requirement a risk management, a risk assessment, where you derive, okay, what do I need to do? Maybe I have nothing to do, supplier is good, standard functionality, I don't test. Maybe this one is a little bit more complex, was configured by us specifically. I will test more deeply that the configuration is correct, that I can't change clinical data with this role, for example, if we follow that, that analogy. So all of that for me is to be rationalized again. So first, analyzing, is my system relevant? And then per requirement, per function that you use, analyzing a bit more granularly, how can I mitigate the associated risks?
Yeah, I agree. And one thing that also people are misunderstanding sometimes is the fact that you have to do this validation or to get this validation, but you have it once and it's over. So then we don't look at that anymore. So what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, that's a frequent mistake, but in our volatile world today, that is not really possible. You don't just put one software version in place and you forget about it for the rest of the life. Normally, you will perform some changes of the modification. You might purchase a new version of the software. So each time you need to exactly recheck what are the changes here, how do they impact my data that I already have it, which type of new function are there, how do I need to mitigate potential risk with those new functions. And where it becomes really more tricky is many customers, they use software as a service. So when, for example, an EQMS, you can buy something that off the shelf, let's say, that's only the supplier is maintaining. So they have a certain, usually a web tool that you can access, you just log in, and potentially they could change the version every day, every week, every month, depends on how the supplier is really dealing with that. But you can't pretend that, okay, I did it once, now for the rest of my life, I have nothing to do with the validation. This is, the process is also to keep the validated state for all the life cycle. And even if you stop the system, you need still to ensure you stop it in a controlled way, that the data that are in there are maybe migrated to a new system. So it's actually a never-ending story. And after you first validated it, then you introduce what you call change management, that we are used to more on the medical device product itself, but also for the quality tools, you need to have a change management in place to review any modification, to also ensure that you follow the procedures that you, because introducing such a system means also defining, how do I maintain it? How do I manage it? For example, how do users get access? This is a classical issue. Okay, can anyone, just because he's the best friend of the system administrator, get the privilege to be all of a sudden admin in the system? That should not be the case. Normally you have a procedure that you make a request, then it is confirmed by the relevant people that you get this access, and then you have access only.
Exactly.
normally review regularly. Is it still the right people? Having access is now Munir suddenly admin. Why is that? And you know, all these type of things is typically what you would conduct regularly. This is what you usually call a periodic review of a system, and this is also to ensure the validated state is not in danger. Yeah.
No, I agree. And yeah, we have this part of having the system, which is quite a system, the validation of it, but all the procedures that are to use it correctly and everybody's following the same rules is also important. Even the procedure for validation of such software should be there. So it's really a lot of layers of information that should be there. It's not just one. And yeah, because each time you go to an audit, the first question is, do you have a procedure? Then prove me that you are following this procedure, etc. So there are a lot of evidences that are provided here. How then, so do you have some advice mainly of how companies can reduce the burden, the work, the difficulty, the stress when we are starting to talk about validation of quality tools?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's an important aspect because what I just described can be overwhelming, and I have many customers say, if we do that, yeah, we are only busy doing that, and this is not building our product further, right? In the first way. But yeah, there are many things you can do. So first is what I mentioned before is selecting suppliers that have the right expertise in that area. So I talked about
these are suppliers of products, so they should be on your approved supplier list.
Yes,
so they should follow the same supplier assessment, etc. If they are high risk supplier or low risk, if you should audit them as you mentioned or not, etc.
Exactly.
So they are really considered as suppliers. So it's not like just vending you a system; they are supplier on your system. Then.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be my understanding and my recommendation. And as explained before, typically if you qualify them and then if you see those are standard functionalities, this is for me then something you can drastically reduce the effort by really doing this a risk-based approach that, okay, good supplier, standard functionality, I don't need to do a lot of verification additionally on my side. So that could be a first good hint to really qualify your supplier on that side.
Okay.
The second one could be exactly minimize the customization. So I think it is tempting to always try to do customization, but that's always with a certain additional risk that can be problematic on the long term. So try maybe more to sometimes adapt your process to what the software is suggesting instead of changing the software to fit your processes, right?
Yeah, but this is important because sometimes you have you go from companies that are or not using any software, and then they have their procedure and they try, as you said, to say, oh, we are since 10 years we are doing the CAPA system like that.
Yes.
But the process tool is asking us this, that, which is not on our previous procedure. Can we remove those fields or can we add new fields, etc.? And this is mainly one of the
yeah,
issues.
Exactly. And sometimes it is really less costly and to really adapt to how the tool suggests, because the supplier that have experience in this area, they usually come with a broader industry perspective, and maybe you just have your own, how can I say, business blindness that, okay, you always have been doing like that, so you want to do it exactly the same way, but in a system. That might be a wrong strategy to implement, right?
Exactly. And so, as we said, the auditor is really looking for that now. I mean, the ISO 13485 is here. The new version with these requirements is here since 2016 now. So mainly this is common that the auditor is asking those information, those questions, etc. So first, not being surprised by this question will show also to an auditor that you know about this topic, that you are managing. So it will not have the smile that we have. Because as soon as we see the question mark on the head of the person, say, okay, now I have a non-conformity here. So which is, I mean, we are not here to reward ourselves with non-conformities, but it's just to say, I find the weak point here. And the second, as we said, having a lot of justification of why it should not be validated or why it should be validated, and what kind of validation is it? Is it directly coming from the supplier, which is providing you the major ones? And if you need to make some small validation by yourself to also show to the auditor that you have made the full package of it and having the right procedure. So this is really a package of things to do. And as you said, it can be also a lot of work for some manufacturers. So I suppose Wega can help manufacturers about that.
That would be my last one. If you have a burden like that, we are happy here to help exactly to lower that burden, to define the best procedure, which is also important, because if you make a procedure where you shoot in your own leg to define, okay, I need to do all of that, which is maybe overkill, then you define yourself an additional burden. So this strategical part, I think, is important to really think twice, really, what is the right process, and then to really conduct it. And here, maybe one important aspect as well is when you do this validation, many customers that I know, they also have this classical approach. I create a lot of Word documents. If I need to do testing, I make it on the paper and I print it down and I write with a pen that I conducted that test, that and that. Here, you could also leverage tools like good EQMS. They sometimes have good solution where you can really manage also your software validation. So have your requirements traced in the system, have your changes, your risks, your tests. Of course, you need first to validate it to be able to use it to conduct validation. So it's a little bit chicken and egg problem, but that could be also a way to reduce the effort, because conducting all these activities per hand and ensuring you have the full traceability and the documentation is right can be quite cumbersome if you don't use proper instrument for that. And
just to maybe to make the promotion of also the tool that we are using. So Easy Medical Device, we are in collaboration with S-Cube Technologies, and we are using Smart Eye as an EQMS tool. And we know all those questions because we got our customers, and each time there is an audit, they ask us, can you send me your validation documentation? Can you send me this and that? And we have those documents that we can send that to them. So we know very well about that. But we know also that some other providers are giving some kind of templates to to the people and say, do it by yourself. But I say, if you are not knowledgeable on all that, I mean, getting templates is not really helping you at all. But as I said, having partners like Wega also can help to make that happen. Apart from validations like that, so why people should contact Wega?
Well, you talked about that at the beginning. We talked about also this, software development versus QA array world. So this is also something we do quite a lot, is to help really, how can I say, improving the process of software development and ensuring this is compliant, training the people to understand both sides of, let's say, the dark and the light side of the software development. And generally anything that has to do with digitalization, so introducing new software, having a software development process, this is really the area where we are specialized. And that we can help really to design and optimize the processes. And
great. So anything about software or development, design, super validation, etc., don't hesitate to call Wega. So Wega, they are not so far from where I am, because they are also in Basel, in Switzerland. So I think it's a really great city if you want to meet a lot of providers for pharma, because we have here a big pharma also like Novartis, Roche, and everyone, the headquarters. But we have also providers, service providers that can help you for this kind of thing. Great. So
to mention, we are just in Basel located, but we have also customers in the whole world. Actually. So
I see Germany, if I remember, Australia, maybe.
Germany, France, Benelux. So majority of customers are in Europe, but we do have as well some in the US. And so if you have questions, don't hesitate to contact me. It's not
exactly. And I will put all the details on the show notes. So to get the information from Christophe and Wega, also some, I think, links that you've sent to me about some elements related to the topic of today. So everything will be on the show notes, so don't hesitate to go and check that. And if you have any question, you can contact directly Christophe and having that. Okay, Christophe, it was really a pleasure. So I thank you really for all the information you provided, and I wish you a nice day.
Yeah, thank you so much, Munir. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.